Good morning, everyone. Welcome to American Scouser's morning coffee or tea with American Scouser. It's Wednesday. World's number one dad is in effect. As always, coffee is here. We have the close number two Gordo here with us. Also, can come to your birthday parties dressed up as Almo. We just found out before the show. What's going on, Gordo?
Not much. Yeah, if you notice my green screen going, and then there's that big furry red guy behind me. That's I'm returning a costume I wore for my son's second birthday. So there is a monster behind me, but it's just a costume. It's nothing to fear.
Well, thank God with no monsters behind him is John. John, what's going on, man?
I'm good. Still a little sluggish after the long weekend, but hanging in there.
Yeah, the long weekend was actually kind of nice. I decided we were gonna originally work because we work from home with Angie, but we were like, you know what? Let's just take it off. It was just way too tempting to take it off instead. Okay, so a bunch of headlines to get to. Tis the season. I mean, it had already started a couple of weeks ago, but the silly season is like full force. If you're in LFC America group, which is our sponsor group for like Facebook, you can see John Kitchen giving you daily updates, now more like hourly updates of what he hears on the streets. I was just saying earlier, he must be like living literally on the streets because he gives a lot of info there. So you take it how you take it. But we talked about this on Monday. We're putting this in effect this year. We kind of like had this last year, but didn't really did get to use it much. So this year we are using it. So we're going to get these names across. And then I'm going to tell you guys to put that red dial wherever you want it, from very likely to not bloody likely, from real deal to bullshit. And we see how we go. So let's start. News coming out today that it is very, very likely now that, let's see over here, this guy is 99% done. I think I was like Anfield Watch or somebody. I saw some tweets this morning that it is a 99% done deal. Alan actually this morning even sent me a message saying it's pretty much done. I'm assuming this is probably the worst kept secret at this point, Gordo. Are we putting this at very likely or real deal?
Oh man, it's one of those things where I really want to believe it, but his market value right now is as high as it's going to be. He's just come off a World Cup. He did phenomenal for Brighton. They're in Europe. It's like Brighton and us are both in the Europa League. Like, why would he leave a team that's in the Europa League to play for another team that's in the Europa League? That would be the only hang-up I could see, is that if somebody else comes sniffing around that has Champions League, that he's going to want to go that way, because right now, got to get the money while it's good, and he might exit. The thing that's going for us is we definitely need like a starting 11 midfielder, and he would 100% get that. He would walk onto the starting 11, which I think might entice him. So
let's see. So who's the competition you're saying? United, Arsenal, Newcastle. Which one do you see as a threat? Because to be honest, now that I think about it, he could pretty much walk onto any of their midfields, couldn't he?
Yeah, and that's what scares me is probably like Newcastle, and they could pay him some ridiculous wage to entice him. I mean, we have if you want to even say that like our history and like playing in front of the Kop is what might entice him, you'd have to say that Newcastle has just as good of fans. St. James's Park is also a great place to play, and they have Champions League football, and he'll also get to walk onto that team. So unless Liverpool have like a really good deal, or like he's been dying to play with Mo Salah, I'm still really hesitant to even put this in the 90 percentile.
90. So you're going with the very likely. I'm getting.
No, I'm hesitant to put it even at 90. So I'd probably say could happen.
Okay, where are you at with this, John McAllister? Put the red dots.
All right, I'm kind of in Gordo's camp here. It seems like it's too good to be true sometimes. So I definitely put it on the first dial over there, right, just on top of the very likely. So just there, the very first line, because we've been burned through the years of like transfers that we thought were like surefire things. Nabil Fekir comes to mind, and for some reason they don't end up going through. So for this one, until he's leaning towards the championship wall just like that, with the jersey on, I won't believe it until I see it. That's basically my policy with every transfer at this point. But yeah, basically I would just be repeating everything that Gordo said. It's going to be a tough battle to get him, and I do hope that it's more likely than not that he'll join. But yeah, just there, borderline.
So,
Yeah.
let me ask you guys this then, because I mean, Gordo, you kind of started talking about it, but in terms of like how bad would you want this to happen, I guess, if you want to put it that way? Because I know I see some people like already kind of like downplaying the transfer, like, why is this such a big deal? We're getting a midfielder from Brighton kind of deal. Is that because we've been talking about it forever, so the new player smell has already worn off before he has even shown up, or he's not as flashy as some would like?
So I've always liked Alexis McAllister. Like I have like a secret little love for Brighton, and I have since they were in the lower divisions. In college, actually, one of my professors was from Brighton, and at that point they were in the championship, and I knew exactly who they were. And he was like, "Oh, that's really interesting. Someone from America knows a championship team in this tiny little town." And then when Graham Potter brought him up, and I just have always really liked Alexis McAllister. So when he was linked to Liverpool, I like wanted him. I had already like in my heart, like where John put that dial at very likely. I bet that's probably because you want him so bad that's what's pushing the dial, and that's where I'm at. So like I would love him on this team. I think he'd be fantastic. I think he's versatile. I think he's strong. I think he's got that vision for passes that I don't think we've had since like Xabi Alonso. So I like him.
Yeah, that's a good analogy, actually, like in terms of like comparison. But now we find out what Gordo would do to get some extra credit for a class. By the way, that's that's dirty. That's dirty. Oh, Brighton, I love them.
Right. They're the Seagulls, right?
So, John, where are you at with it? I mean, I kind of like. Like normally maybe I would not be as big, but I feel like he's the perfect piece for him, like perfect piece for this team, for this midfield. I feel like he brings everything you want and fits Klopp's system a lot. A lot of other teams might be like, oh, he doesn't contribute attacking so much, blah, blah, blah. First of all, he can play anywhere in that midfield. Mm-hmm. And the things he brings are things that we really want to have.
Exactly. He's kind of those plug and play kind of players. For example, we're missing a particular piece, like we need someone on DM to cover, God forbid, we actually could place him there because he has played a bit of holding midfield for Brighton. I'm not sure how he'll cope, but we can put him there, right? I also think that he has some traits that our midfielders do not have, which is he's quite direct. He's not afraid to take a shot every now and then, and he's not afraid to actually get in the box and score, and he's actually a threat. Compared to what we have now, it's definitely a breath of fresh air. Like I kept saying, since I got into this podcast, that he's a hand in glove fit, and I would definitely 100% be for getting him on board. And if it happens, it's a very good start for our transfer window. That's all I can say. So again, fingers crossed.
Yeah, I think we're definitely rooting for this one. And in the world of the bullshit meter, I am putting it this side very likely, actually. I mean, we rarely have this much freaking smoke where you can't even breathe. You have to like get low, not to choke in that smoke. So I'm hoping, I guess my fear is the same as Gordo's. And, both of you guys mentioned that somebody who has Champions League or who's kind of like giving higher wages coming in the last second and taking it away from us. Dom is with us this morning. Good morning, Dom. So rumor has it that United will offer 75 plus Maguire for Rice, and West Ham just want the 75 million. I saw him post this yesterday. It made me laugh. I mean, that's the thing. All joking aside, though, I wish we had some pieces where we can like throw in there for money ourselves. I know Maguire is not worth a whole lot, if anything, but which actually, you know what, Maguire might do well. In a team, I think that sits back, but. Heck, I mean, he was like the most coveted guy. He was the next Van Dijk and stuff like that when they got him out of Leicester. So let's go back to other rumors. Let's start with this one here, and then you can put it on the dial over here. Talked about a lot yesterday. What say you, John? Let's start with you on this one.
Well, admittedly, when his name came up, I actually had to do my research because I knew we were going to talk about him in the podcast. So I haven't watched him. I haven't watched him play as much, but based on what I've read, he seems like he's very tall, midfielder, right? Very physically dominant as well. In terms of like the traits, for a midfielder, it's a good ball carrier, very physical, good ball winner. I think he'd fit in with us very well. The traits are not a question. The validity is what you're asking. So since it just came up, do you want to bring up the meter again?
Yeah,
it's definitely on the doubted part as of now.
Okay.
Yeah, doubted as of now. Yeah.
Gordo, where are you at with this thing? I mean, we talked about this right before it went on air, but I looked at like one or two YouTube videos for him, and they were really short, and I was like, okay, like I don't know why I even looked, kind of thing, because I knew before I even looked that anybody can make any YouTube video about anybody. I mean, give me a guy Maguire. You can probably make a YouTube video about Maguire that makes him look like the best center back of all time, and then we know it is not so. So those YouTube videos, you have to the only thing I saw, mind you, within those clips of his highlights is he will give you a heart attack and lose the ball right in front of the box because he was doing some Thiago-like stuff as coming out of the counter right in front of his own box. And obviously these are the clips where it worked. I was like, I wonder if there's a YouTube clip somewhere where that shit didn't work and he turned the ball over. And not to mention, he's playing against defenders in France, so that YouTube clip is like me playing against some 5-year-olds at the same time. So Gordo, where are you at with this thing?
Yeah, and with Thiago, like when he first joined us, he was very much like all about that flashy style, and it's what like I think a lot of people were excited about getting him for, and Klopp just beat that out of him, and now he just goes on and does a job like very, very, very vanilla blue collar. Just like he has sort of lost that little like flair touch. It's just like, no, that's not what you do here. So I think you could definitely take that out of him, but I bet you if we get him, the first couple games might be a heart attack. I'm gonna do what John did last time and put the dial right at could happen and doubt it, because what I look for is sometimes you'll see quotes on these guys and it'll be like, oh, his manager or like somebody that would like profit from him moving is like talking him up and like, oh, he's one of the greatest. But there was a guy that's just a scout in the French league that has like nothing to do with him, and it was not affiliated with Nice or anything like that. And he had said that out of like all of I know he's 22 now, but the U21 players, he was like one of the most complete defensive midfielders in that age group. And I was like, all right, well, if this guy's saying it, and I could not find a link that he would benefit, and like that's what I take. That's the highest stock that I'll take. So I would like to see him, but like you said, it's brand new information and stuff gets wild, especially after the season just ends and we got really nothing to look forward but transfers. So you get a little bit of a sniff of something and everyone jumps on the hook. So we'll see. But it would be nice to have like a young, very talented player to kind of even replace Fabinho.
Yeah, until we make 2 or 3 signings, this is going to be crazy, anybody and everybody. And I think, this is kind of like what the managers do, right? I mean, like, or agents, I should say, like they're like midfield. They're like, who wants my guy? Liverpool does, and then, just to bring the price up, even though if we had no interest. Tell you who's big on him is Dom. Dom says he's a must. He's a beast. And he actually said he's a more mobile Yaya Toure, which would be nice to have. I guess, let me ask you guys this, though. If, let's say, tomorrow we sign Thuram and McAllister, do you consider Thuram as a project that in the long run, because of his age, like John, because he's only 22 and he's still like looks a little raw and coming from a league, obviously that's a lot slower and not as physical as like the Premier League. Would you consider him as like, one of the big pieces into midfield, or would you kind of take him as, and he's a good future project?
I think it's a little bit of both. I think he'll be given a lot of opportunities, especially since I mentioned in a previous podcast that we definitely need to stop putting Fabinho in every starting 11 throughout next year because his legs have certainly gone. Considering that fact, I think if we were to get him, he'd be starting quite a few games, especially I dare say Europa League group stage, kind of games because I think it's the perfect situation for him to get into the system and all that. But yeah, he seems like he has all the tools physically, and that is something that Klopp will just be like, oh yeah, this is the kind of guy that I like. So I don't think it's gonna be like a Calvin Ramsey situation where he's just glued on the bench. I definitely think he's gonna be getting quite a few games in. So a little bit of both to answer your question. Yeah.
So, Gordo, let's say we sign him. Where is he in the midfield depth chart, if you will? Like, is he the fourth, fifth midfielder that you would say? Because, I mean, you don't look at him and say, oh, he'll just walk into the starting 11, kind of like we are with McAllister.
Yeah, and Klopp really gives the guys. He's not one of those coaches who's like, I'm going to give you a chance, and then they do it, and then we sign somebody bigger, and then that person sits the bench. So at the end of the season, like Jones kind of fell out of favor around the turn of the year, and Klopp gave him basically a job interview. And like, all right, you've got 5 games, and he exceeded. And I think Klopp will reward that. So you'd probably put him as like 4th in the depth chart if we got him. But our midfield gets injured so often that I think within the first 10 games
you'll be one in no time.
Yes, exactly. Yeah. As long as he stays happy, he'll get 5 starts, in the first 15 games or so, just based on injuries alone. So you'd probably start it, everyone healthy. Start of the season, he's probably 4th or 5th, but very quickly he'd move up to 1. And then if Klopp loves to reward hard work, so if he does well in those starts, then he could easily just cement himself in there.
See, in the dial, I am putting it right exactly where that default red is right there, like the could happen spot there. And the reason is I feel like there will be some signings like this. There will be at least 2 or 3 signings like this of young players that maybe are not like in everybody's list. And the reason I say that is how big Klopp is this season in terms of not coming here, not traveling a lot. They're only doing 1 trip in 1 location and getting back. He wants a long off season. And I feel like the big reason for that is we'll probably get some tactical changes that, probably more of maybe like Trent tucking in or whatever it's going to be. But I also feel like they have some names like this in mind, young players that will come in and need a lot of molding and a lot of work to fit in. So a name like this, when I saw it, I was like, oh, I can kind of see that just because of that. He's going to have like 2 months, 3 months. Because, I mean, even Fabinho, when he came over, he did not play for like 2-3 months or something like that before he started starting. So I think that gives him that time. So I'm all for it. I can see it happening. So let's go to the next one. This also came up yesterday. Where are we at with this, Gordo? Let's start with you on this one. Did you even hear about this one? You're looking at it like, holy shit, I didn't watch any YouTube on this guy.
No, I haven't watched any of the highlights of his highlights yet. Again, though, big guy, young kid. And I don't know much about him, but if much like a lot of the guys that Klopp likes, he kind of fits the mold. If he's got the tools, like John was saying, it's somebody that Klopp would really appreciate working with, and some, a versatile extra utility piece there. But yeah, I don't know a whole lot about him.
Sparky says, can't sign a player called Manu. You know what? I did not even think of that all this time. I've been looking at it.
I love it.
Where are you at with Kone, apart from his name being Manu, John?
Again, a very desirable piece, desirable physical traits. I have been going through the depths of Twitter, and I dare say I've been seeing some people comparing him with Jude Bellingham, of all people. So, and I read this article from Empire of the Cup state, and it's pretty informative. Their stats aren't too far ahead. So, assuming we do miss on Bellingham, which is 99% likely, basing it entirely on numbers, no eye test, he seems like a good cut price deal if we were to get him. But in terms of the meter, do you mind bringing up the meter again? Because I want to.
Let's throw the meter on here. Okay.
Right, let's throw the meter again. I'm pretty much on the same front as Thuram. definitely undoubted still.
Alan says another player who spends time with a hairdresser. I think that's just bitterness on our part, Alan, for not being able to even need a hairdresser, but that's a different story. Gordo, where are you putting this Manu guy?
I think what goes against both these guys that we just talked about is they haven't scored against us, which seems to be something that Klopp really enjoys. Signing
like,
players.
maybe we'll meet him in Europa.
Right. Yeah.
I love one of the reasons why why people justified why we signed Nunez. One of them was he made Van Dijk sweat. And I was like, true, I guess, yeah.
We signed Minamino too. He scored against us. It's just
Right,
like,
exactly.
all right.
Yeah, right?
Yeah, right.
But let me ask you guys this then. I mean, would you rather, let's play a little would you rather have one name like McAllister and let's say 4 or 5 guys like this, that where we have to go and, you know, look footage for? Because, I mean, I don't know a lot of people who regularly follow the French league, to be honest. Bundesliga probably a bit more because it is a more interesting league. And I mean, I even watched like a couple of games, but it was mostly to watch Bellingham and anything like that, to be honest. But so let's start with you. Would you rather do one guy, like let's say McAllister's in the back? We put him on the arrow on the very left. And then would you rather get like one big guy in that everybody is after? Or would you rather have like 4 or 5 players like this that have the potential in this, like, 25, 30, 35 million range?
I think if we brought all these, got a couple pieces last summer, I think everyone would be very happy with it because we had such a productive season last year. And like, all right, now we've got some backup pieces to work with. I think now, like, I don't want to say panic mode and everyone's going to hit that red button, but you definitely need the players like McAllister who are already Premier League ready. They're complete pieces. And somebody that can step straight into a starting 11 without that 3-4 month buffer that Klopp usually gives. And like, I think that players like Nunez, unfortunately, like I love the guy's work ethic, but like things got bad and everyone jumped on him, almost 100 million, young kid. He was supposed to be the thing. He comes in the same season as Haaland. Haaland's off and flying, and Nunez is still stuck missing open nets inside the 6-yard box. And I think these players coming in, if they don't immediately perform, I think that's when the 21, 22-year-olds start acting like Nunez, where like he basically loses his starting 11 spot when he was basically a shoe-in for that role, and struggles. So I think right now I still would personally like it because I am never in panic mode with Klopp. I think there's always like he's always got a card up his sleeve. It was an unfortunate season. I think we were just really tired, and a lot of players were tired at the same time. So I would like to see the signings, but I think in terms of like the overall fan base, you're probably going to need McAllister, another big name, and then maybe 1 or 2 small pieces in order for everyone to be happy and a little calm. Because with McAllister, like I said, he slots into the starting 11. We can put him in day one, and if he stays healthy, he can play all 38 games in the Premier League, and he would do just fine. I think we need one more player like that.
That sounds fair. Sparky says we need big players at this moment, left it too long for development in this transfer window. And I think that's fair, but I do want to see like 2-3 players like this sign because we do. That's where I think we're where we're at because we never signed these players over the last few seasons. We did not invest in this sense and maybe like roll the dice. I mean, the gambles we took were like Taki and stuff like that were like really, really small, gambles, like 10 million and less. I think it is time, if you want to make it big, you got to kind of take a couple of gambles at like, in the 20 to 40 range, and then hope that these guys become that, 70, 80, 90 million dollar midfielder or whatever they're playing that, you would have to pay next year. Like we missed out on, like a couple of names last year. I mean, heck, Caicedo, stuff like, you can list all these midfielders we kind of passed on last year and didn't take a gamble at, which would have been, first of all, very useful this season. And second of all, you would have increased their value tenfold. They would probably increase their value even more if they were at Liverpool. But what is your, I guess, ideal scenario, John, in terms of numbers coming in and I guess like the stature of those numbers, let's say?
Right. I think I'm pretty much like for like with Gordo, basically 2 Premier League proven or elite signings, along with maybe 2 or 3 possible prospects. Because let's face it, some of the positions, particularly in midfield, we do not want some of these guys starting every game anymore. For example, the likes of Henderson. He can play. He can come up with a big performance every now and then, but you can't rely on him to do 2 or 3 games in a row of high-level play like he did back then. Fabinho as well. We got to conserve his legs. So definitely either 2, if we're lucky, 3 high-profile signings, particularly in the midfield area that to just slot in would be ideal. And then we got these guys basically projects, low risk, just there on the bench, developing, playing on the low-stakes games. That's the ideal scenario, of course.
But would these guys come there? I guess that's like my other question. Like,
Right.
if we get, you make 2 or 3 major signings, then I'm saying, oh, wait a second, where the hell am I going to play? And then be enticed to go somewhere else.
Well, we're still in Europe. There's still the cup competition. So there's a lot of, if he's just talking about a purely playing time standpoint, Klopp can go like, oh, you're going to play here, here, here. There's quite a lot, I would say. Like I said, when we talked about him, I think the Europa League group stage would be a good sort of, I wouldn't say training ground, but it would be a good like low risk experience for these guys. Say what you want about the Europa League, I still think it's a competition that we should take seriously, and I think it's entirely dependent on who we have on our group, if whether we could actually play the main guys or we can actually rotate. But in terms of competitions where these guys could play, if they're worried about playing time, we're still in 4 competitions next year. If that's their issue.
Somewhere Taki is saying, listening to you and saying, yeah, that's what I fucking thought too. But
he did play in he was the Cup Mo Salah, wasn't he?
Yeah.
Right. So,
and I think, yeah. I mean, we do need players to fill that role as well, right, and like show up in those games and stuff. But do you think, I mean, we already talked about how the Champions League affects it, but I think they're coming for you, Gordo, for wearing that Elmo costume in public, by the way, in the background. I hear the cops coming, so heads up. But do you think like it affects these players in terms of how attractive of a location? I feel like a young player right now in midfield looks at this midfield and says, I could freaking be starting. I have a shot at this, and be a lot more likely to sign, as opposed to they're like, wait, you guys got, I mean, not going to happen, but let's say Bellingham and McAllister, they're like, oh, okay, I guess I'm on the bench.
Yeah, I mean, that is the goal. I think that's exactly what they look at is, can I get playing time in a Premier League team, on a good Premier League team, a team that I could help bring back to the Champions League or win a trophy? Like, they probably look at that lineup, go, I can slide into that, and there's a possibility we win Europa League next year, like a decent possibility. And I think sometimes for the younger players, that's all they want. And even if it's, I use the word malicious only because I love Liverpool, but they look at it and go, oh, I can springboard my career here. If it does, I can get the minutes in the Premier League, I can get the minutes in Europe, and then move on when my stock goes up to somewhere, that'll pay me more if it doesn't work out here. So I think it's a really lucrative move for maybe an unproven 21, 22-year-old.
Okay, well, let's play this game then. Mateusz says, only problem is Klopp has struggled to rotate. Hopefully Europa changes that a bit. Hopefully is the key word, and I think, that means we do need to have a larger squad that is properly rotated, because regardless of how young these guys, Klopp's system can beat down a 22-year-old in no time. And here's another thing, like, these guys are coming from, if they're coming from the French league especially, are coming from an easier league in terms of conditioning and stuff like that. I mean, I don't want to make it look like they don't play soccer over there, but in terms of like being, keeping up with the physicality and the running and everything like that this league and our system demands, it's not cake even for like a 22-year-old. But let me ask you guys this. So let's start with you, Gordo, since you don't have the mug to prove it, but you're a number one dad yourself. Let's say Finn is 22 and is getting these offers. Would you rather have Finn go to your professor's Brighton, for example, or let's say Brighton is maybe, let's say Fulham, okay? Go to Fulham and kind of like make a big name for himself and know that he's going to start and maybe then take the big next step? Or do you say, hey, this chance may never come again. Let's take Liverpool off because you're going to be biased. Obviously, if he gets a contract for Liverpool, you're like driving him over there to sign it right away. But let's say, he gets one from Newcastle, right? And do you want him to go and sign there for maybe slightly more wages, even, but might not start and might kind of like, halt his career over there? What do you recommend your son?
It's this weird too because it's like my son, so I want to be there on the European nights. So I would probably say Newcastle.
You're more after the free tickets.
Right. Yeah. The St. James's Park against Real Madrid on a Tuesday night. That's with the possibility of my son maybe looking on from the sub bench, but
yeah, or sitting next to you.
really, yeah. Career-wise, I'd probably say Fulham. One, because they love their Americans, so he'd probably be welcome with open arms over there. But yeah, I think like if I thought that he could do it, if he was at that point where he's getting these offers, then not maybe going so far. The other side though is sometimes you look at a team like Fulham, and if he couldn't, or if a young player couldn't slot into those positions, then what other trophies are they going to go for? Whereas like a team like Newcastle is going to look at the FA Cup and even like the Carabao Cup as kind of annoyances, and that's when Finn would make his starts is in those competitions. Okay, so maybe going to Newcastle would be the move, because Fulham would look at the FA Cup and the Carabao Cup as like the only shot at a trophy this year, and so they're going to play the starting 11 all year, and he might not make it. So I don't know. That's an interesting question.
How about you there, John? Sparky is sending him to Newcastle, already packed the bags and sending him over there. And yeah, I'm a little torn on this myself, but let's go with you first, John. You're a ways ahead from making this decision probably, but you will make it one day. So get ready for it. This is good practice for you.
Definitely. I would say Newcastle as well. The chance to play for a Champions League club, I would advise my kid, is pretty once in a lifetime, regardless of if you're starting or you're coming from the bench. The fact that you're around these world-class players, these world-class coaches with world-class habits, a lot of world classes there, but these things, they rub off on you, whether if you stick with Newcastle or you go to another team on loan, or you get transferred in. These things, they don't come on every now and then. They're not common. It's very rare. So I definitely try and tell them to, maybe if you feel like you need more playing time, try and stick it out first. Get the good habits in, and prove yourself every training session. Obviously, it's easier said than done, especially if you're not getting the time in. But to Gordo's point, there are windows of opportunity for you to actually get in. The FA Cups, the League Cups. If they were eliminated from the Champions League, maybe the Europa League, although that would be group stage. I don't see him starting. But
you guys are going really deep into this, Jesus.
Right. Yeah. I was thinking about it like incredibly deeply. I was like, that is a good question. What would I tell my kid? But yeah, long story short, definitely gonna go Newcastle. Mm-hmm.
See, Mateus says if he does go to Fulham and for some reason he's unable to get his footing and falls out of favor to play, that will hurt his stock much more than making a move to a bench of a bigger club.
Exactly.
But here's what I will come back to you guys with, because I was like on the fence, and literally as you were making your case for Newcastle, I think you made me tilt towards the other way. Because here's what I'm saying. I know it sounds corny, but you want your kid to be happy. And a player is only happy when they're playing. If you go to Carvalho and ask him right now, would he be rather be at Fulham still, playing every day and becoming a part of that team, and maybe like then looking for something bigger compared to where he's at now? Gordo, what do you think he, for example, picks?
He'd probably go back to Fulham for sure. Because I think there was that false hope And sometimes when you're that big fish in a small pond, or you've got the label on your back as being the next big thing, and you make that move a little too early, maybe you got false pretense of like, oh, I'm going to be a hero in my first year. And sometimes like that can really affect you mentally as a young player. I think often you listen to some of these interviews of even retired players or veterans in their 10th, 12th season that'll tell you the same thing. Like, I didn't learn to be okay with starting or coming off the bench until I was much older and much more mature, because I mean, there's a reason these guys are professionals and they made it this far, is because they were the best of the best in their group. And so sometimes that mentality can drive you insane as well if you don't get those minutes.
How about you, John? Did I sway you that away with the Carvalho theory, or you're still sending your kid and like, suck it up, Buttercup, and go practice at Newcastle?
Well, obviously, like Gordo said, there comes a point where you realize that after a long time that, oh, maybe I should have done this, maybe I should have done that. I definitely think long term it might be a more preferable move to stay in a successful club. But to Gordo's point about mentality, it is tough. Like for Carvalho, he was one of the main guys for Fulham. He was relied upon to create something, to drag the club out of the mud. And then he comes in here to Liverpool, and then, first few months he manages to play a little, but then now he's just glued to the bench. It's tough for him. And I actually think his situation is unique because it's like a style of play kind of thing. But yeah, to your point, it's also a very good example. But I'm still sending my kid to Newcastle.
I don't care. You're still going to Newcastle. He's a different example. I mean, I just threw it out there as like a young player who doesn't, who would rather play kind of thing. Because his thing is like a more of a system and everything like that. And Sparky says young players get loaned out from top clubs for playing time, but that's my thing. I'm telling my kids, do you really want that? Because now you're not picking your destination. The club is picking your destination in terms of where to go. Whereas, as a kid, you're picking it. And I realize, it's a one-time opportunity, perhaps. It's all about timing and stuff like that to get a contract for a top club. You may never get that offer again. But yeah, it's a tough one. And I know, like I say, it's very simplistic the way I made the question, because there's going to be a bazillion factors in terms of how the team plays, the trajectory and stuff like that. But I figured I pick your guys' brain on this. Okay, so before we go right here, speaking of all this Europa talk, and now, we're like, hey, it's not that bad. But even you admitted, John, that the final just crept up on you and you didn't realize the final was today. When we were looking for the headlines last night, you were like, oh, shit, yeah, the headline. So this tournament's final is today. Sevilla, Roma. John, who you got?
I'm going to go with old Jose. I think the serial winner mentality is just going to creep in. I know... Actually, Bleacher Report's headline was very intriguing. They framed it as an unstoppable force versus an immovable object because of Sevilla's Europa history and Mourinho's just serial winner mentality. So it's a very good battle, honestly. And, for someone who didn't even know that the Europa League final was today, it's actually quite exciting if I come to think of it, right? But yeah, I'm gonna go with Mourinho. I think he's gonna win the game with like 7% possession, as he always does. Hit them with one good counter, one shot on target, 1-0 victory Roma. Mourinho gets his, I don't know how many Europa Leagues he's got, but he gets another European title. Yeah.
I mean, I have not watched a lot of Roma. I did watch Sevilla. Fenerbahce almost eliminated them from the Europa League. They should have won over there. They lost 2-0 because they couldn't finish the first half, 4 clear-cut chances. At home, they're up almost went up 2-0 again and didn't. And I think that's the closest team. All these other tough teams they play, Fenerbahce is probably the closest to eliminating them. They just know how to win this tournament, Gordo. But like John says, freaking Jose knows how to set it up and sit on your ass and counter. And Sevilla can be countered on. I can definitely tell you that. They are a little shaky defensively, but they have a lot of people going forward that can make a difference. Who do you pick?
I think this is so exciting because it's just bonus football, It's just like if this happened like 3 weeks ago, everyone would be like, "Oh yeah, I'll look at the score after it's done." But it's like the season's over, and you're like, "Oh, there's another game. I'll watch this one." But yeah, I think it's I think it's Roma all the way. Also because when you're as egotistical as Mourinho and he wins the first Europa League Conference League like trophy last year, he wants to be the only coach to ever win a Europa Conference League trophy. So he'll definitely be good for it. But yeah, I think just the pedigree and the nature of Jose Mourinho and the way he sets up tactically, it'll probably be one of the most boring games ever, and they'll win 1-0 or win on penalties. But that is Mourinho, and that's why he's one of the most elite coaches out there.
Yeah, I mean, the only way this game gets exciting is if probably Sevilla scores early, because otherwise, yeah, Roma is just going to sit back and not do anything. Sparky says Eurocopa is sad, like comparing League Cup to FA Cup, and he's not watching it. I mean, I'm definitely watching it because, it's soccer and it's on. So that's all the requirements I have for the most part.
We'd probably be there next season as well. We'd probably be there next season as well. So
yes, let's check out the atmosphere, see how it is. Where is it at? Is it in Hungary? The final? Is that where it's at?
Europa League.
Let's see. Of course, it doesn't say. Yes,
Hungary,
yes. It is in Hungary. Yes. Ellen says he'll watch it with one eye closed. I can't. One eye is going to be there. Yeah, ours is in Dublin next year. That's where we're going to be for the final. But yeah, book your tickets now so that you don't get stuck afterwards. Okay, so quick score prediction. You guys already called it boring, but Gordo, go with your score prediction. Sevilla, Roma.
1-0, and Mourinho slides on his knees.
At this age, probably like twisted or something. John, what do you have?
1-0 as well. Mourinho slides on his knees and starts cussing out the camera people. So, man, it's not even the game. I just want to see how Mourinho is going to be when he wins. So,
I only caught like I said, I don't watch a lot of Roma. I did catch their last game where they had no business scoring at all. So I'm going to go with Sevilla, actually. I think they get goals. They win this 2-1. And they know how to do this thing. This is their tournament, so I expect to win. But it should be like an interesting game. It'll be probably boring, thanks to Jose. But hopefully an early goal will open things up. And Mourinho will honestly, by the way, I don't know if you guys caught this. So I was about to close it up, but him talking about Tottenham. I don't know if you guys caught this. I was going to actually bring it. Did you see that, Gordo? Where he talks about, but what does this say where every manager, I mean, I'm one of the few guys that finds Jose actually a semi-likable in a douchey kind of way.
As long as he's not in the Premier League. Yeah, I love him
right?
in the Premier League.
And I thought he was great in the studio. I wish he would stay in the studio I thought he was excellent because he could give you actual stories, and I know he's cocky and everything like that, but I don't know. Something about him I do like. His no bullshit, I'm going to tell you exactly how it is attitude, I do really like. And he talked about how he felt loved everywhere he went, even places he got fired at. And he would go back with no hard feelings, and he feels like he would get applauded and stuff like that. And probably so. And he singled out Tottenham again. I mean, who's lining up for this job at this point to say, let me be the next one, Gordo? Because I thought it was pretty damning, the stuff he said. And like what Conte said, it's sad, but it's true.
Yeah, when Poch wins a trophy, and it's probably Carabao Cup or FA Cup with Chelsea next year, it'll put the nail on the coffin, hopefully for those Tottenham fans, for Dan Levy, because it is a giant joke that club. And you and I talked a lot about it about a month ago, 4 or 5 podcasts ago, about that situation over there with that management style. It just doesn't work. And so when these big managers are consistently, Roma, who, yes, at one point they were a big powerhouse in Italy, are no longer that. And he's going to possibly win back-to-back European trophies. I know one of them was the Conference League, so it doesn't matter unless you're a West Ham fan. But he's gonna win back-to-back European trophies. There's a possibility of doing it at Roma, who are basically, after Francisco Totti retired at 53, no longer are just a shadow of what they used to be. So I think that this year especially, I am I'd put money on Pochettino winning one of the domestic cups with Chelsea, and that would be just the end of it for Dan.
I think Sparky says Tottenham needs Ted Lasso, and maybe they even didn't pay Mourinho $10 million plus when he fired them. Hence the lack of love. I mean, here's the thing, though. I mean, it's a proven fact now where every manager over there are taking a shit as they leave or after they leave. Whereas you do not get a lot of that, John, where usually managers don't want to burn bridges, but it feels like it's a common bridge to burn. Like everybody's shitting on it. Yeah, I might as well. It's like that's the fire hydrant that every dog goes and takes a piss at. Is Tottenham, and I don't think anybody I don't think it gives the manager a bad name. It's at this stage it gives the club even a worse name because they're just voicing a known fact. It sounds like, and it's not like somebody being bitter.
Right. The thing with Mourinho is what sealed it for me. What I couldn't get over is how they fired him before the cup final, because that's his whole thing. That's his whole thing. Like, he's a cup final manager. He's one of the best. And for you to get him out before the cup final, I was just like I'm a Jose fan. I wasn't when he was a United manager, but I actually liked him at Spurs. I thought he needed more time. So when they got him out, I was like, what are you guys doing? The whole phrase, it's Spursy, that is just very Spursy right there.
And they're not in Europe anymore, are they? They somehow managed to. I think we were talking about. I think
Villa on the last
about like one of the longest streaks ending, like the second longest streak or something like that, ending for the Europe. Yeah, it is. I guess Spursy at its best. So, by the way, you said Conference League, and then you were like, we were saying the same thing about Europe last year, like for those who care about Europe or kind of thing. So yeah, let's hope we don't jinx ourselves any further. But you guys enjoy your Wednesday. Thanks a lot, John. Thanks a lot, Gordo. Thanks to all those listening and watching. Give it a like and a subscribe and all that kind of good stuff. Tell a friend. Let's get this pyramid scheme going over here. Everybody tells one friend and the other one tells another friend, and we get the numbers built up over here. But have a great Wednesday. The boys will be back tomorrow night. Mecca and the gang will be there. And I do believe the Fantasy Nerds are going to do a recap for the fantasy season, who are American Scouser League BJ1. So it's Revenge of the Nerds there. But then they'll talk about really, really tight for the American Scouser Cup. I think it was within 3 points or something like that for the winner of that fantasy league. So yeah, I don't even know I didn't even look at where I ended up on that one. So have a great day, guys. And stay tuned tomorrow night for the Thursday night